I don't blame you. All right, let me go over to the Book of Faces. La la.
Your coffee's hot now. Tepid.
A little over tepid, but not hot. But it's better than none.
Indeedy.
Come on, go to my profile. Thank you. Jesus. How hard is that?
It's as hard as you make it, Guy. This is why we don't do a live show, Guy.
It sounds echoey.
Well, tough.
It's not necessarily, though. All right, go over to YouTube. All right, go over to YouTube. Library.
Yeah. You're coming through Facebook fine. No echo.
Okay. That's probably just what's going into my earpods.
You're coming through Facebook fine. No echo.
Okay, can you turn that down now because it's bleeding in?
No, I've just turned it off, man.
Okay, good enough.
So we're live on Facebook now?
I'll tell you in a minute. Come on, go to my... Almost said a bad word. Almost.
Yeah, it says it. Well, maybe. It says it's live. I just shared it to the MyMac page.
We are live.
So it'd be bad. So this would be a bad time to talk about my burning hemorrhoid.
No, please. Somebody put a test comment over Facebook. Oh, there's David. David.
Oh, I heard a hoof then.
We can hear you now, David.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, that's better.
That's better.
Okay, yeah. I think we are. Everything is effing working.
Just to be sure, Guy, you don't need us to record at this end, no?
No.
Okay.
Incredibly.
All right, I'm going to hit it in Hindenburg for audio. And we are recording, as far as I know.
I've got it recording on my end as well, just in case.
Okay. Well, everyone who may or may not be here.
I fall into both of those categories.
Sorry for the delay. Someone's watching. Okay. This is just going to be kind of a free-for-all. So everybody just have fun. Talk about the history of the podcast, how you got interested, how you got started, all that other happy stuff, and how we got to where we are today.
Do we know?
And
here today, I'm not sure.
Anyone have a good suggestion for a title?
4 Men in a Box.
All right, that'll work. MyMac Podcast 900. 4 Men in a Box. So, before we actually start, why don't each of you say that in turn? Tim.
MyMac Podcast 4. Wait, what number are we?
900.
He's sacked already.
Yeah. MyMac Podcast number 900. 4 Men in a Box.
David.
MyMac Podcast 900. 4 Men in a Box.
Gaz.
MyMac 900. 4 Men in a Box.
Boy, this is going to sound great when I put all 4 of them together.
No, it's not.
MyMac Podcast 900, 4 Men in a Box. Okay.
You're definitely not going to be able to put mine on that because I didn't say podcast. Ha!
Well, well, then say it again.
No.
No,
The power of editing.
Yeah.
You've said
Delay
the word
me.
podcast and you've said that.
Yes,
So
let's see how good you are.
Well, we'll see. All right. I'm going to do the title and then we'll get started. This is the title for the video. Whoop. MyMac Podcast 900, 4 Men in a Box. And a cat outside my door. It's scratching. But I'm going to ignore him.
And her name is Audrey.
Actually, it's probably Jelly.
I was talking about the box.
Oh, look at this.
Yep.
It's gone. 3 years.
Yeah. Can't believe it. Problem with his lawn, he's had his hair cut.
I'm doing it again.
That's from Eric.
Have you got a new rug in your study, Guy?
I can't tell which is Guy. I can't tell which is Guy.
I actually have a cap I got at the beach that has like blonde hair sticking out of the top of it. But I like Tim's better. It's got that Trumpy America look.
Yeah.
America.
America.
Hey, welcome to MyMac Podcast, y'all. It's good to be here. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
all right.
boy.
Hold on.
They listen to My Gun and My Truck, not My Mac.
All right, I'm going to bring each one of you in solo, and then we'll go to the 4x. And welcome, everyone, to the MyMac.com podcast. This is number 900 in a series of 900. Could be more, could be less. We don't really know. We haven't paid that much attention. But to start us off today, the man, the myth, the legend, who started us all on our podcasting journey, and that would be Mr. Tim Robertson. Hello, Tim.
That sounds more like you're blaming me.
Well, it is kind of your fault.
Well, I don't know. Fault. I mean, come on. Yeah. It was first MyMac Podcast was in 2004.
Yep.
Long time ago.
Long time ago. And the only person we're missing here is Chad. But I don't even know if he even does this stuff anymore. Does he even have the equipment anymore?
Probably not.
Okay.
My guess is. But he didn't respond to the emails or anything either, so.
Okay. Well, how dare he?
Right?
Next up, we have Mr. David Cohen.
Hello
there, Mr. Cohen.
Hello.
Wasn't it fun trying to get everything working this morning?
So we can talk at some length if you want about the limitations of iOS as an audio interface.
There's many.
Plugged it into a Mac and it worked first time. Unfortunately, I don't use a Mac very often, so I had to go and find everything and put it all together.
And last but not least, I would say the most junior of us as far as podcasting goes, but we've been doing this now, Gaz and I, for about 615 shows, something like that. Mr. Gazmaz.
Hi. Oh, by the way, I'm going to show you my T-shirt. There you go. Keep calm and let the Wookiee win.
Okay, well, I'm usually referred to as a Wookiee.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Well, you weren't winning today, were you, when we first come on?
I was not winning at all.
We will not dwell on that because I'm used to it.
You should be after 600 plus shows. Actually, no, 600 or 700. It was 285. Okay, let's go.
Who's counting?
Obviously, I am.
Yes.
Obviously, I was counting.
Your OCD kicks in.
About what?
Just about everything.
Okay, well, we're going to start off with Tim, who's going to explain to everyone how this all started and kind of the genesis of the show going up to about show 100.
I guess, yeah. It actually started back in 1999, believe it or not. That was when MP3s were kind of really coming into their own. And the idea was recording something in MP3 format and putting it on the MyMac website. So anybody could just click the button, it would play in QuickTime, and you could hear audio. And I actually recorded like an 8-minute demo, if you will, and sent it out to the entire MyMac staff, which I don't know if you were a staff member in 99 or not, Guy.
No, I wasn't. I joined like 2002, 2003.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. And I had lost that file years and years and years ago. And Russ Walkowicz found it. He found the email that I had sent it out. And he called it Tim Invents Podcasting, which wasn't accurate. But in essence, there was an intro music. It was me talking on you remember I want to say it's Logitech. It was a really dark gray mouse or a microphone that it was just one stick that came out right at you, kind of a sharp angle, and had a button on it to start, to turn on the mic. Yep. So I recorded on that, and the music was just playing in the background because we didn't have an ability to kind of combine those two things in 99, at least not easily on a desktop Mac at the time. And I sent it out to the staff, and it was really about somebody else doing it. That's kind of where it started. Here's something we could do. We could call it MyMac Radio. It'd play on, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we'd have ads on it, that sort of thing. And it went nowhere. Didn't go anywhere until 2004 when Adam Curry and his buddy, I can't remember the other guy's name, invented podcasting.
Dave Weiner.
Yeah. And I couldn't get my RSS feed to work. And it was actually Adam Curry who fixed my RSS feed for this show to start. So we pretty much started this podcast at the dawn of podcasting. There's other shows with higher numbers, if you will, number of episodes out there. Very, very, very few. Maybe 5-6 shows in existence that started as a podcast that is still podcasting.
Before we did.
Yeah, it's been continuous. Since 2004, this show hasn't been on hiatus for more than 3 weeks. During Macworld Expos, we'd have, 2 or 3 episodes.
So what happened after, you got the show started? It was you and Chad. And I know at one point you actually had a TV news crew that came to the house and interviewed you and Chad about podcasting. It was was that a local Battle Creek station?
Kalamazoo, West Michigan, CBS affiliate came out, did a spot. I don't remember how they found out about us, but it was a very flattering 3, 4, 5 minute piece. It's on my Facebook
it was
page.
long. It was long.
It was. And she was the lady who came out the intro, actually said, blah, blah, blah. He was picking his domain name when all these other ones were still available. And it was at Chad's house. It was recording a show in GarageBand, and it was pretty cool. I think that was towards the end of 2005, so we'd been doing it for about a year at that point. But yeah, I mean, at the time, you had to explain what podcasting was because nobody knew. That's how soon and early we were podcasting. No one understood what the term podcast even meant. And it was Chad and I at first, but there was a lot of excitement by a lot of people on the staff. I remember John Nimirovsky really wanted to be involved, and he had a segment on the MyMac podcast at the time. Usually he would talk about books and stuff like that. Guy Searle, who did the Dashboard Minute. That was his contributions to start. Nowadays, if you're a newer Mac user, you may not understand what a dashboard is, but it was basically a secondary screen on your Mac, and you could have these little widgets or apps, and Guy would find the best and the worst apps to talk about. And you probably did that for 20, 30 episodes.
I think over 30, because I was still doing it when you got up to, I think it was like in the 80s. Yeah, it was in the 80s when you kind of put the kibosh on all the different segments, because it was just getting too hard to edit them all in.
David Cohen was our UK. What was it, David? What did we call you?
I was your London roaming correspondent.
That's right, because David was new into Macs, if I'm not mistaken.
I was, yeah.
And you had gone to a show and looked at the iMac, right?
Yeah, well, basically I reported the entire show, but I just recently got the Mac Mini and really gotten into Macs. And yeah, there was an Apple. I think it was like the last UK Macworld Expo, effectively. And I went to that down in London. It was much smaller compared to the American ones, but I went there and recorded some audio while I was there, and then you were gracious enough to play it. And after that, you kept asking me to come back on the show, so I did.
And then we couldn't get rid of them.
Yeah. Until I got rid of myself for a time, which the fact that the guy still remembers the number of the show means that he's still bearing the mental scars.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and so that was the beginning. David came in, you were doing it. Gaz, on the other hand, we had a segment where we would invite people, listeners to the show. And I believe that's how, I think the first time Gaz was on the MyMac podcast, it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Gaz, but wasn't it just you and I?
I think you might be right, actually. Yeah. I don't think there was. It was you were having people on, and I think it was we just timed the week, and I don't think there was anybody else on at that time. I think that's right. And then you invited me back at a later stage with a few more of us. Then there was a hiatus before I jumped on a more permanent basis. But yeah, the first time I came on, I think it may just have been you and I, definitely. Just talk, because I was definitely that. So that would have been around 2008, probably the back end of 2008 or mid 2008, because I'd been doing some stuff with Mike Potter, doing a similar stuff with David, really, like David, doing news and reviews from across the pond is what we called it. And I'd try and concentrate on European Mac news or Apple news if I could. And so it was generally about a 10-15 minute segment. And I don't know how I picked up. I must have sent a comment in or something, or said, I'd like to be, you might have put a call out, because I was soaping every Mac podcast up that I could, because I was being new to the environment. You just want to learn as much as you possibly can. And so I was just soaping everything up, and being the quiet sort of chap that I am, I reached out to a few people, and whenever they said, do you want to be on the show or whatever, and I think I pinged out to you guys, because I had quite a lot of views around why I thought Apple should perhaps allow non-Mac Macs to be able to run the software, to bring them into the environment. Now, obviously, that was a stupid thought, of course. But
it didn't have to be. It was just the execution of that idea of the clone Macs, if you will.
I had a couple of those.
Well, I wanted a couple. The power computing ones were very impressive.
MyMac ones too.
Yeah, I always thought those were ugly, though. They had the little dimples on it.
Yeah, the 900, yeah.
The S900, yeah. That power computing, I think it was the 950 or something like that, was just an amazing machine. So I was doing the podcast. Eventually, Chad left the show. And initially, Guy, it was you and I as co-hosts. That was how it was for a very brief moment in time. It was you and I, and then we brought David in.
The weird thing was, you kind of, as I recall, you kind of stopped the segments in the 80s, show 85, 86, something like that.
I broke them off to a different episodes. Remember, we had the MyMac Mini podcast for a while. I think that went maybe 15, 20 episodes.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, well, because we had so many segments that there was no time to do anything. And then at one point, Chad was still there. You were there. I was there. David was occasionally coming in. We'd have people like Rick Stringer coming in. We had all these different guests. And the best conversation was actually happening before we hit record to do the MyMac podcast. So after we stopped the segments, the show started getting away from us a little bit. So we started a secondary show called The Geekiest Show Ever, which, by the way, is still going strong. So the Geeks was kind of always in there. And so we would do two shows, remember. We would do 1 week Geekiest Show Ever, and then we do the MyMac, or we would do them back to back the same day. But that became a little strenuous, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I remember leading up to show 100, you actually had finagled an invite, or maybe not quite an invite, but we kind of
It was an agreement.
Yeah, pushed our way into the Apple Store in Grand Rapids. And originally it was going to be all three of us. You'd gotten like a bunch of stuff to give away. And as it turned out, Chad wasn't able to do it. But I flew from Virginia into Michigan the night before, met up with
the day before, because we actually, the genesis of the geekiest show ever was actually there as well, because we recorded you, me, and Chad, a geeks show, if you will, in your hotel room.
Yes, for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
2.5 hours. It was a long one.
It was definitely a long one.
You broke that up into like 3 or 4 different shows, as I recall.
It's been so long ago, I can barely remember, but yeah. And then, of course, like you said, Chad couldn't do the broadcast, if you will, from the Apple Store. And by the way, that manager, their team got in trouble for us recording in that store.
Really?
Yeah. You're not supposed to do that without corporate okay.
I remember I was sick as a dog.
You couldn't tell though if you listened to that show and while you were there.
I really pushed through it.
Well, you drugged yourself up pretty well too.
Yeah, it was like I'm chugging NyQuil in the back room.
I remember.
So, semi-conscious.
We had a lot of stuff to give away. Microsoft was a big sponsor of that episode because they gave us quite a few things: Office, some keyboards, mice.
And I remember there was this one kid who was getting the tickets, because we basically were giving tickets to everybody as they were coming in, and then doing like a drawing for him, like every 5 minutes or so. And this kid was like snagging these tickets from people.
Because people didn't want to wait, so they were leaving, and they were giving him the ticket. He probably walked out of there with $500 worth of stuff.
He basically had like his arms above his head like this, looking like he had 2 boom boxes of various Mac things that he was taking out of the store.
Most people don't know that wasn't Macaulay Culkin.
That wasn't what?
It wasn't a young Mark Zuckerberg, was it?
No, it was a young Macaulay Culkin. Most people don't know that.
He was like, I won. So from 1 to 200, it was generally, for the most part, it was you and me and anyone else that we had
a rotating
crew.
Yeah, David was in there a lot at that time.
Yeah, I was. In fact, I think I seem to recall that after I met up with you guys at Macworld Expo in San Francisco in 2008, the beginning of 2008, that I started doing the show a lot more.
Yeah.
And I remember Lee was on there as well. Do you remember Lee?
Yeah, Lee Gibbons. He worked for AOL, and then he went to Microsoft, and he's working for a smaller company now, but he's doing really well. Yeah, I see his stuff on Facebook and LinkedIn occasionally.
And was that when you stepping away from the show?
No.
Was that when you went? Was that when you went to work at OWC?
No. Well, yes, initially.
Sort of.
Kind of. I really stopped the show when I took the job as COO of a company called Mac Specialist.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And that was because Apple.
Oak Park.
Yep. Apple wasn't really happy with one of their big companies that they worked with in Chicago doing this podcast where I was talking about Apple and Apple products. And I had no problem of critiquing Apple. If I thought they were doing something stupid, I have no problem about saying that. But that is a problem when they're your biggest supplier and you're, an authorized service center, you do engineering work, you do professional level training. It's kind of an issue. So they asked me to not do that show. And that's kind of why I left the MyMac podcast, because Apple really wasn't happy with me doing the show, which is weird when you think about it now. It was because of Apple that I stopped doing the MyMac show.
Yeah.
What they wouldn't give a shit now.
Wasn't that like around, as I recall, that was like around show 250, somewhere in that range.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
Sounds about
and then,
right, yeah.
And then David and I did the show. And
Yeah.
I think we actually had Gaz on
We did. Yeah.
at one point. But the weird thing is, and anyone who knows me, this will not be a huge surprise. I did not remember having spoken to Gaz on the podcast before. And I think it wasn't until we had done like almost 100 shows together that he was like, well, I've been on the show before. And I was like, what?
Well, it's funny how
That happens to you a lot, Guy, doesn't it?
It does. It's kind of, I blame it on a couple things. Number one, I'm from Florida, and I am a product
Fair.
of the South Florida educational system. And I grew up in the 70s in South Florida as part of the South Florida educational system. And there was, and I lived like 3 miles from the beach. So there was a lot going on that I'll probably never remember from the 70s. And it has kind of carried over in my life as time has gone on.
Yeah,
now
there's kind of lots of
almost
things,
62.
lots of things that you don't remember from the 80s and the 90s and the noughties. And,
Or last week.
yeah.
So
Or how to set up audio.
So you guys are doing that, and I stopped working at Mac Specialist. My initial thought was to come back to the MyMac show, but
Mhm.
you guys were doing such a good job. And OWC wanted me to do a show called OWC Radio, which I'd already done before as a kind of a subcontractor. I was doing that while I was doing the MyMac podcast way back in the day. And I became an employee at OWC, traveled all over the United States doing shows for them and stuff like that, plus the podcast and social media and all that. But it was during that time where David and you were pretty much the host of the MyMac podcast that David had to leave the show.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever really explained to you, Guy, why I had to leave the show, have I? I mean, it did come literally out of the blue. It was literally
Well,
a few days
David-
before a show.
David, I think I know, and I'm still here. I can't believe it myself, but
I was because it was like 2 days before we were going to record.
Yeah.
And Tim knows this about me, but I typically, when I'm doing a podcast, I need some structure. I need something that's going to be like,
I used to
Okay.
drive him crazy because I would say,
Oh.
well, we're just going to hit record and do the
Yeah.
show. And guys like,
It's
what are we
like,
doing?
no.
and I'd
What
be like,
are we
"Just-
going to talk about?
We
or
did that
even
on stage
better-
at the Macworld Expo.
Exactly. That's what I was going to bring
The
up.
whole time he is freaking out, like, what are we going to do on the stage? Because we're on the
Sweating
main,
profusely.
we're on this huge, giant main stage at Macworld Expo. It's a big
Yeah.
audience, and I'm like, dude, we're gonna, no
Yeah.
problem. You go on the audience, and I'll sit on the stage too, and we'll just get people involved and have fun with it and
I'm like,
sweat, just
"Oh."
sweat.
Having
do I
done one
do?
of those with you, Guy, I remember quite clearly. How,
Yeah,
How
I
you,
really need structure in my
yeah.
life to keep me going. It's why I'm still married today, because
Isn't it
besides
crazy
the
how
fact-
much stuff we've done on this show?
it's just insane.
How much
And-
we've done because of mymac.com. I mean,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's amazing.
just this little thing I started in my ex-wife's basement.
Yeah.
Because I
Well,
wanted to write.
Well, the website has evolved as well.
Yeah, we don't
And-
really do. It's more of a
I know,
podcasting network now.
That's one thing I really kind of miss from the old days is we don't have as many written articles as we used to. It almost
They
needs to all
just
be
take so much
podcasted.
time and
They do.
effort, and people just don't have as much time, I think, anymore. There's so many more distractions now.
Yeah,
And let's be honest, it's so much easier. Let's say David and I we want to talk about the latest whiz bang, right? Well, instead of writing an article that's going to take weeks to write and edit and get some screen grabs and all that, we'll just talk about it on the next Tech Fan for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You know,
and
it's just so much
as well,
easier.
yeah. Also as well, I've noticed from my social media, everybody who wants to review tech stuff now does a video on YouTube. Nobody
Yeah.
writes written stuff anymore. I find it infuriating because I don't want to sit through somebody's 20-minute video just to
I
find
think-
out whether a product is any good or not. I want to sit and read it and sometimes I want to read the headlines or skim through the article or read it in detail, but I don't want to go through somebody's YouTube channel with you've got 5 minutes of click here to subscribe and all of that sort of stuff.
Like, share,
Ring the
subscribe.
bell.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Smash that like button. I know.
Now,
I think I've done.
Can I
I've done
jump
the
in?
last.
Can I jump
Yeah.
in? Because I
Well,
want to jump.
okay.
I want to jump back to why David left.
Yeah.
Because,
right, okay.
Because you've given me, I don't know, 12, 14 years of hurt and pain since then.
It's your fault, David.
Well, it involves a dead hooker.
You're right. I talked about Guy's scars, but I really should have talked about yours, shouldn't I? Because you're playing the real penance. So yeah, what happened was that I was sat there one day, and I got a call, and it was from the Prime Minister of the day, and she said, "We need you at MI5." And unfortunately, much like
Cohen,
Apple,
David Cohen.
if you're going to work in MI5, you can't do podcasts anymore.
Hmm.
So I had to very quickly decide, do I serve my country or do I serve Guy Searle? And my country won.
Yeah. Do you know?
I
I
can't
wish
tell you
I
the
could.
last time I had to serve Guy Searle. It was embarrassing.
I so
Yeah, that's
wish
one
my,
of those things he doesn't remember.
My neck still hurts.
What?
I so wish my country would call me.
Well, essentially, I got the word like a day or two before we were going to record the next show. And I called Tim in a panic. I was like, "Oh God, what am I going to do? I can't."
I still remember that I was actually, I was outside.
Had to talk me down from the ledge.
Yeah. And I said, you know what? I've got a guy who I think might be interested in doing it with you, at least temporarily. And quite honestly, I think the two of you together would work really, really well. I know his voice. I know his personality. Combined with you, he's also, from England, but it's a different personality than David.
Yeah.
And I think between the two of you, I think it would work really, really well. And that's when I reached out to Gaz.
Yeah, and I've said to you many times since then, Tim, that the Guy and Gaz show is a much better MyMac show than it was when I was on it. It's far more. It's not the sort of show I like to do. But it's much more entertaining.
Well, it's funny because I think from a personality standpoint, you and I work really well because we do that yin and yang a lot, where we disagree. Like we just did a Geeks Pub episode right before this 900th episode of the MyMac podcast. And
is that what this is?
Yeah. And then so we had some disagreements on a couple of the things that we're talking about.
Yep.
Now, we don't have huge disagreements, and sometimes I'll just be a jerk and take the opposite view just to make it interesting.
So it's not like a Jets and Sharks kind of
no,
thing.
But David and I kind of have similar, that kind of works for us. Yeah. Whereas you and Gaz are way more closely aligned when it comes to the humor aspect. And the show, I think, I agree with you, David. It's way better with Gaz in that role than you.
Yeah.
Just from a personality standpoint. And which is weird because I thought all English guys are exactly the same.
They're not?
Seriously, there is no great mystery in why I had to stop doing it. It's basically I was staying up till 1 a.m. to do those shows. And my wife got really, really tired of it. I then committed another minor misdemeanor at home that basically said part of my apology to her, which she's saying, "Oh, by the way, I'm not having you staying up until the middle of the night doing those shows anymore." And so that was why I had to stop. Even today, Tim and I record at a more reasonable hour for both of us to make sure that I don't cross that line.
set for me, it's 7:30 in the morning on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So I don't know how reasonable that is, but I'm up. So what the hell?
Yeah.
And plus, it's before the dogs and the cats and the kids and everything else.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
The issue I have with Guy is I always have to make sure that we're going to extend by about an hour, mainly because of some technical issues which may or may not happen every week. He has got better recently, though. He has got better. Today was back to normal.
Today was unusual.
Today was unusual because it was me with the technical problem.
No. I was having before we started actually recording, for whatever reason, because I've got this like super complicated setup because I'm recording video through StreamYard. And I don't usually, we never do this show live. This right now, doing this live is like the first time that Gaz and I have done this live ever. But at the same time, and StreamYard, of course, is recording both audio and video, but the audio that you'll get back from them is typically just going to be kind of So I also record it in Hindenburg in 3 different tracks, MyMac, Gaz, and then Farrago. So for things like, it gives, me a chance to go back through editing the audio and do a little bit of putting a limit on it and some compression and blah, 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 so that it sounds much, much better than what I'm going to get back from StreamYard. The other thing that I do that I've started doing is, because when we're done with a show, typically a MyMac podcast, the finished from, welcome to the show to the ending theme, is going to be around 50 minutes to an hour and a half. so somewhere it depends on how manic I happen to be that particular day. And what I was finding was nobody was looking at the video that I was putting out on YouTube, because who wants to sit there and look at 2 old guys talking about tech for an hour and a half? So recently I've started doing these little 2 to 3 minute snippets that I just kind of pull from the show as it goes along. And I'm finding that not only am I getting more traction on those videos, but I'm also getting more traction on the audio snippets that I put out on Podbean on the Guys Daily Drive feed. Mm-hmm. More people are listening to those little snippets than they are the great big long one. So I'm going to keep doing that. There'll probably be a number of snippets that I'll pull from this show and I do all that in DaVinci. But because I have audio like going all over the place, I've got to use Rogue Amoeba's Loopback to do some routing. And it usually works great. It didn't work this morning, though I have a feeling part of that was Chrome, because after I restarted Chrome, everything started working. So
go to Microsoft Edge. It's much better.
Well, I've also got the Brave browser, and that works with StreamYard as well.
So yeah, I was a little bit disappointed when I couldn't get my iPad working and this will probably be a Safari issue as well, I'd imagine, now that I know. Yeah. So I broke out my Mac, which I hardly ever use, because I just don't need to use it for anything anymore, and all my work stuff is Windows. Broke out my Mac, fired it up, put your link in Safari, and it goes, "Oh, you need Chrome." And I was just like thumping my head against the table. It really is, the ubiquity of the dreaded Google.
Well, David and I started doing a little video for a while there as well. We were broadcasting live to
Facebook, wasn't it?
Facebook, YouTube, a couple other places. It started picking up a little bit of traction towards the end, but it was just too much work.
It is a lot of work.
And it was very frustrating for David because I was constantly trying to get something to work, and he's just sitting there waiting for me. Until we just said, you know what?
What's that like?
We're an audio podcast. Let's just do the audio. It was David's constant bitching that made me get off the Mac and GarageBand and recording it that way.
Yeah.
So now I just do everything, from the Shure mic right into the Zoom, and I use the iPhone.
Yeah. Because you got a P8, David. Right? You got a P8?
L8.
L8.
Yeah. I'm on a P. I'm on a P4.
Can I ask a question about mics, Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where the hell does he get his obsession on mics from? Is it you?
No, it's not, dude.
It is not Tim.
When you watch that video that guy was talking about from the news company coming out and doing the story, the microphones I was recorded on, you can actually see on that video, was the same microphone that I was using until about a year ago. So it definitely wasn't from me.
Yeah.
I was using the same mic forever and ever.
I'm using a no-name Shure clone mic that I bought on Amazon for about 20 quid.
Now, that being said, the moment I switched over to the Shure mic, within 2 episodes, guy was like, "I don't know what you're doing differently, but you really have your audio dialed in really well." Well, I got a Shure microphone. It's SM7B. That's
Yeah,
it's a
a
great
dynamic.
mic. Yeah,
It's like a $400 microphone, so it damn well should
it's
be.
not like a 400. It is a $400.
It is a $400. Yeah. Well,
Like
the
the
weird thing,
industry-
I was
like the
like
industry
stuck
standard.
But
on.
let's not say that too loud. Julie doesn't know.
Okay. Like she watches the show, like my wife watches the show
Or listens.
Yeah. Even back in the Dashboard Minute days, it was every single week my audio sounded completely different because I was trying like all these different things because I just wasn't satisfied with the way it sounded. And that was kind of the genesis on the obsession with
At least you
different
said
microphones.
obsession.
It was, it was. I haven't bought a new microphone in a while. And the one I'm using right now, the weird thing was I was like obsessed with dynamic microphones because dynamic microphones take out so much of the background noise. And as long as it has,
because you're in a really noisy room, aren't you, Guy?
No, I'm not. But that was part of it. It used to be really super noisy, but the way that I've rearranged everything, it's much quieter now. But I was like trying all of these different dynamic microphones and pretty much eschewing different condenser mics, which have a completely different sound to them. And then I found this one that I'm using right here, which is it's a Lewitt 440 Pure, and this is the microphone that I have now been using for probably the last couple of months. And the longest, the other two microphones that I've used for that length of time, I used an SM7B for a long time. And then I also used a Heil PR40 for a long time, both dynamic mics.
It's not a long time.
No, well, I'm talking like I used that Heil pretty much constantly for a couple of years, except for like I would go off of it for a week or two, but I always came back to it.
When we were setting this up, Guy, and you said you'd been through some stuff in the last couple of weeks, I actually texted to Tim and said we should have a whip round for Guy to cheer him up, buy him a new microphone.
I honestly, I don't need a new microphone. I've got so many microphones.
So for me, other than this, having to change or replace the Rode Podcaster, the Rode Podcaster mic that I've got here, I'll just see if I can raise it slightly. There you go, that one there.
Yeah, USB
Rode Podcaster. That's the one I've been using since probably 2009. So other than having to replace it once.
So you're like me. It's like if it works, why keep screwing around with it?
So
the microphone's not going to make me sound any more intelligent.
It won't?
Trust me, I've tried.
Maybe if we got one which had infinity stones in it.
Well, there's that.
Now, when Gaz's microphone went out, I leapt into action and sent him a replacement setup, which I think was a Behringer interface.
Yeah, it's down here somewhere. I was just looking to see if I
and some relatively inexpensive dynamic microphone.
Yeah, which I tried once, didn't I?
Yeah, it was like 1 or 2 shows that you did use that. But
seemed too complicated to me.
I know. But
I've got backup now.
You do. So if anything happens, you're good to go.
Yeah.
So after I left the MyMac show, I kind of didn't do any podcasting for a while, because of Apple. But when OWC made me a job offer and I took it and I did the OWC radio show for the second time, one of my things I insisted on, and it was non-negotiable, was that I was going to be doing podcasting outside of OWC. If they didn't like it, then I'm not taking the job. Mm-hmm. And they agreed. So in September of 2010, I launched TechFan, and it was going to be kind of similar to the MyMac show at first, in that I was going to have a roaming co-host. And the first episode, I had David Cohen on, and he came back for what, episode 3 or 4?
3, yeah.
Yeah, so I had a different guy on 2, and then David came back for 3, and we've been podcasting TechFan
the new
ever
show
since. We still kind of think of it as a new show. We just recorded 476. But we don't do podcasting on Just Tech Fan every week. We do it every other week when we're not skipping a week, which has happened quite a bit in the last year or so. We also do the Geeks Pub. So we tried to split up tech heavy focus shows and our geeky stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know how well it's worked splitting the shows up. But it kind of gives us a little bit of a different focus, which, by the way, David, we forgot to do because we did a geekiest show today and we didn't do the music thing at the beginning.
Oh, we didn't. We were going to do
I blame you.
Thing,
I know you put it in there.
Because the creator of it died last week.
Blame the Brit.
I usually do.
I looked at the notes right before we started as well, and this thing completely went out of my head.
Well, now, Gaz, before you started doing the MyMac podcast, you were on somebody else's show on a regular basis.
Yeah, Mike Potter.
Yeah,
who we now know does something a little bit bigger. Yeah, so it was for Mac Eyes Only, FMEO.
And just to be clear, that's for Mac Eyes
for
only.
Mac, not for Mac Guys only. No,
I know. I always mix that up.
Yeah, for Mac Eyes Only. And as I say, I won a competition actually on his show. The software was it was a recording software for DVDs, I think. Can't remember the name of it now.
Toast?
No. It was just a little app which actually burned. It had the icon when it was doing its stuff, when it was burning DVDs.
I remember that one.
It would burn it out. So anyway, I had a problem with the license and I contacted him. I wanted to go, you know the old messenger that Max had where you could contact. Well, basically you could contact every store. And
right.
There's a story about that actually, about people taking pictures and somebody getting a Mac and actually they'd left all of the pictures of the people taking those pictures using this software on the Mac, and this person bought the Mac, and actually I appeared on that on one of those pictures off this Mac. Anyway, they used to use AIM or something. You'd sign up and you could link him. Anyway, I started talking to Mike about this software issue, the license, and he got me the license, got it all fixed, and then we just we started chatting, got on with each other, and then he asked me about doing this segment, and I was doing that from probably I would say it was November, December 2007 to 2008. And then kind of, I carried on for a bit once I started podding with you, Guy, but it kind of died off a little bit because Mike didn't do his show as regularly. It may come out once a week. It might come out once a fortnight. He tried to keep it as regular as he could. And really now he only does the reaction time, which goes out, but he's still got a following.
Yeah, which you're still doing.
Yeah. But he's obviously gone on to not taken over, but he's tried to keep that Mac ecosphere of people, and the Mac world had a good vibe, which I never went to. You guys obviously did. I think you've done some Mac worlds as well, David, I believe.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I did a couple.
And then obviously Mike started the MacStock process. So, but that's where I started. Although I was on MacCast as well. Adam Christensen. He had a short spell around again the late 2007s where he was bringing listeners on just to talk about what they do and how they use Macs. But
MacStock became a big thing for us. MyMac was heavily involved with MacStock.
Yeah.
When Mike first started that, I know you guys were some of the first people to find out about it. It was because of me that we got OWC, because I was working there at the time.
Yeah.
As a sponsor for that.
Well, it only made sense because they were right around the corner. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they didn't want to do it though. Mike came in and gave us pitch, and God bless him, it was terrible. And I talked to them afterwards because he didn't really have a clear
vision,
and he,
because that was right at the start, wasn't it? And I think
it was. And
yeah. Well, remember
the
very first one was like the combination Barry Fox barbecue at his house, and then the one day event at the McHenry Community College.
And all four of us were there for the very first Mac Stock.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, there's a really good picture of us.
No, David wasn't, but his keyboard was.
Oh, that's right.
That's right, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, he was there for the
There's a
second
picture.
one.
Yeah, somebody was holding up his keyboard in a
That's
picture.
right.
Chad Perry, the original co-host with me on the MyMac podcast,
Was
was there
there.
for the first. Yep, because there's a picture of the four of us: Guy, Gaz, me, and Chad. As you know, the beginning, and then the ones that are killing the show.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. We killed
I
it
just
yet?
remember because I had like this 4 microphone setup that I had brought with me, and for the barbecue, we actually set that up in Barry's dining room at this round table that he had there.
I remember that. Yeah,
And at one point it was Dave Hamilton, it was Allison Sheridan, it was Pilot Pete, and there was somebody else, and I don't remember who it was. But I had wanted to go have a cigarette, so I stepped outside and Gaz stepped with me. Before we left, we'd already recorded like 15 or 20 minutes, something like that. And when we were leaving, it was either Dave Hamilton or Allison was like, well, we're going to take over your show. And and both Gaz and I were
that
kind of
sounds like Allison.
yeah, go ahead, go for it. So I'm outside having a smoke. Gaz is there with me, and they're just recording whatever crazy stuff they wanted to record. And I wish I could tell you what number podcast that was. You'd have to go back to 2015 and those shows to find out what it was. But there's like all kinds of, one of the things when Gaz and I took over the show, it obviously within a relatively short amount of time changed very, very much from the show that it had been. And it became kind of, for better or for worse, less focused on Apple stuff and more focused on just Gaz and I having these weird conversations back and forth. And
Well,
I
think
have
it kind
to
of
say,
had to do that. The show had to change because you couldn't keep the same format we were doing
no,
because the website was changing, because that was a big focus of
We
the website.
we stuck
and
with
the
that for
podcast.
quite a long time, though, Tim. We
Yeah,
did stick
I
with
know.
that.
I know. Yep.
Yeah.
But it naturally evolved. It wasn't a conscious effort on either one of your parts, and it was obvious when you listened to it that evolution was happening, and the show became better for it. After I left, it still felt like you guys were just filling in for me for a while, especially with you and David.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I think you and Gaz were by yourselves, probably 20 episodes into your run, where it finally stopped feeling like Tim's gone and we're just doing shows without Tim. It stopped being my show, and that's when it got good, because it couldn't be my show. I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, I think the biggest change in the MyMac podcast has been that we're, there's lots of tech shows out there. There's lots of shows that talk about Apple stuff on a regular basis, and
It's just not that interesting.
well, if that's what you want, then that's fine. You have a lot of different choices.
Yeah.
But in order to do something like this long term and not make anything from it, none of us are making any money from this. It has to be something you enjoy. It has to be something that you look forward to doing. And that was the one thing that became obvious when Gaz and I took over the show. We just enjoyed talking back and forth. Well, I did anyway.
It's the same with David and I on Tech Fan
Yeah.
and Geeks Pub.
The
subject
you have to enjoy
doesn't
it.
matter. When I think of podcasting, there's times that David's on vacation, he's on a cruise or something, and I, unlike Guy, am fine doing a solo show, but I just don't really want to, because to me, podcasting at this point is the conversation of David and I. That's what I like. That's what I dig. And I don't really care about what the subject is. Some of the stuff that we talk about before and after the show might be more interesting, but it's probably more controversial, so we don't discuss that stuff on the show.
Yeah, there's some carefully placed edits on what we put out on the MyMac show.
Got to be careful.
Yeah, I think
Very, very careful.
the other thing is that I think you've got to remember that the subject you're talking about, Apple, has changed so much.
Well, when we started the
since
show, they were a very beleaguered company. They
Exactly.
it really did look like they were going to go out of business, Guy.
Yeah.
You remember that very well.
Oh yeah,
We were working hard
get the word out.
to get the word out, to get more people to buy their products because it was so far superior. It was just, it seemed like it would be an injustice for that company to go away and their products. And we worked hard to save the company, if you will. There were no Apple stores. There was no iPod. There was no iMac. And we worked our ass off. In some respects, it paid off. They became a big company. Was it because of us? No, of course not. Did we have a small part in it? Maybe. I think we kept enough people, and I don't mean MyMac, I mean the podcasters and the Apple web, if you will, back when the Mac Observer was at its height, and Apple Links and MyMac, and there was a bunch of little independent publishers that was keeping the flame going, that was keeping the faithful in the products. And when you're recording a show in a new medium like podcasting, that passion came through. And if you also had that passion, like Gaz, for instance, he was, like he said earlier, eating up all these Mac podcasts because it's, I don't want to say like-minded people, but the same passion, we really like these products. We want to keep it going. And I don't have anyone around me to talk to about this stuff because we didn't. We found each other, that was Apple Groups at the time, but now it's online. And
almost all the Apple groups are all pretty, for the most part,
they're
gone.
pretty much gone. Yeah. The written word on websites is one thing, and there was some great writing out there, but the podcasts were even better because it's so much more personal. You can listen to it on your walk. You can listen to it in the car. You can listen to it at home. It's a voice, and it's not dissimilar to your own. And they're passionate about the same thing you're passionate about. So it was easy to focus on Apple and their products and the user base and, the huge number of shareware items that were out there. And, it was easy. And then success. Apple turned it around. They're one of the biggest companies in the world, more money than most countries at this point. And why? I'm not passionate about Apple anymore. I'm not. They're a giant evil corporation. You can't get that big. Well, to a certain extent.
The thing for me was that when I started doing this, sort of 2005, 2006, obviously you guys then were talking about what you saw then as the golden years of Apple, which was the 80s and the 90s. The Apple II, the original Mac.
Okay.
And then obviously there was a slow decline into the late 90s, where effectively the company was circling.
It wasn't even slow. Yeah. It was like an avalanche.
But when I came along and got into Macs in 2005, 2006, they were just on that uptick. The iPod was out. They were about to do the Intel transition, which I think, looking back now, we all recognize transformed the Mac into something.
Saved the Mac.
It saved it from dying because it was on the way out.
Yeah.
And now they are this, with the success of the iPhone, which none of us saw coming. Then obviously they are this hugely dominant tech company. And you're right, it's very difficult to be passionate about such one of the largest companies on the planet. It's difficult to keep that, and also the way we all interact has changed as well. So I think you're right, Guy and Gaz. The important thing is you've got to be willing to talk about whatever. And pick out the bits you want to talk about from that environment, rather than being kind of, the cultural,
the water carrier.
Exactly. Yeah. The cheerleaders for the company that in the past has not done so well.
100%.
And I think we all recognize that. Apple did some amazing work around that time because they had to. Yeah.
The iPhone was an amazing
product because it had to. They're still doing amazing work, but it's not the same because. So I think just sometimes you just do it differently if you're betting the company on every job. And,
but
nowadays they're not. So
but David, do you not think that is possibly part of this particular technology can't go leaps and bounds and I think all of the companies have got to like the pinnacle. So it's going to be the next environment where we hope that they then become a leader.
Tim
Well,
has
I
said
think
it-
that's a lot of it right there. I think everyone is kind of holding their breath, waiting to see, and it's not necessarily even going to come from Apple.
No.
That there's going to be some big leap in technology, something that nobody else has thought of, something that people are going to look at and go, oh yeah, well, duh, why didn't we already have this 10 years ago? And that will be the platform that everybody starts jumping on. It's not going to be computers. I don't think it's going to be television. I don't think it's going to be phones or watches or anything else that we have out right now. It's going to be something different. And what that something is, I have no idea. It could come from Apple. It could come from Google. It could come from Facebook. It could come from like all of these different tech companies that are out there right now that are putting in all this time, money, and research trying to find what is this next big thing that's going to attract the attention of the people that are buying stuff. And I have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
Well, here's the problem. When Apple, it's really easy to say Steve Jobs is gone and Apple has declined when it comes to innovation. That's a easy thing to say, and there's a reason. There's isn't it?
I don't think it is.
I think it actually is. If you go back and look at what Apple was, even after Steve Jobs left the first time, they floundered, and it was only until he came back. Apple has always been the Steve Jobs company, always was. He wasn't a tech guy, but he had taste, and
the power to say no.
It wasn't so much that, it was he had good taste. This works because of this. Now, was he always right? No, of course not. The Cube comes to mind. Well, he always knew that was going to be a bad idea.
That was kind of forced on him.
Yeah. The Cube would be a good idea, but except it actually was a brilliant idea, the Mac Cube. It was just way ahead of its time, and it was underpowered. That was a tech limitation. It wasn't a style. There isn't anybody, and I, even with Johnny Ives was there isn't anybody that understands taste, that doesn't, it is missing that secret sauce. And Steve Jobs, unfortunately, is kind of a one or two guys per generation that has that. And Apple is Apple because of Steve Jobs. Now, did he bring a lot of baggage? Sure. But man, that guy, look, other than Gaz, we've all been there for a Steve Jobs keynote.
Yeah.
We all understand that reality distortion field is a real goddamn thing. Now imagine being an employee in that company, and that's the guy that's leading you. How can you not do greatness? Not out of fear, but because this guy elevates everybody around him.
No, fear was a big part of it too.
But fear because you don't want to disappoint the guy, not fear because you're going to get fired. There's a difference. And you hear it with people who do interviews and books and stuff like that. Tim Cook isn't that guy. No. He's just not. I love Tim Cook. Don't get me wrong. But he is a manager. That's what he is. He's not a product guy.
He's not a leader.
Oh no, yes, he's 100% a leader.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He's a business leader. That's the difference. Yeah. Steve Jobs was a leader of creativity. When they said Apple was a company where the liberal arts meet business world, that's where the Apple resides. 100% correct, except they haven't been in liberal arts in forever. And all you got to do is look at their cookie cutter every year. This is the new iPhone. This is the new. I'm not saying the products aren't cool. They're not, but they're neat. But they don't have the passion that we all came up with liking Apple. I hate to say it was because Steve Jobs died, but it is. Yeah. That company I think he was an asshole. Don't get me wrong. We probably would not like Steve Jobs. I've had interactions with the guy twice. He was Apple. And the reason it came back after when they almost went completely underwater under Gil Amelio, which wasn't his fault. He was a Band-Aid. No. And by the way, ex-CEO of Apple was on this podcast.
Yep.
Apple would not have become Apple without Steve Jobs, both before and the second time. The iPod, the iPhone, the redesign of the Mac, the focus on think different. All of that was from Steve Jobs, all of it. And there hasn't been anything. Yes, the watch is nice. Is it? No.
It's not super game changing.
It's a small iPhone on your wrist. I mean, come on. I like it, don't get me wrong. And I'm sure we all four own one. But Apple needs that guy. And they're never going to get him again. So when we talk about where we go
tech
forward,
in general needs a guy like that.
And unfortunately, we have the Elon Musks of the world that should just shut the fuck up and get off Twitter, right? How are you an Elon Musk fan? I hear, I've always admired him. Why? Why would you? I mean, the guy lies about stuff all the time.
Yeah. I think the other thing you got to remember, game-changing products like the iPod and the iPhone put together in a speed that Apple just does not do nowadays.
That all happened within 10 years.
Yeah,
the
but
iPhone,
not only that,
the
I'm talking about
iPod, and the iPad.
individual products. They went from deciding to do the iPod to coming out with the finished iPod, which pretty much hit it out the park on the first run. Yeah. The essentials of the product were all there on that first. I know it was Mac only when it started, and so it had a slow start, and the iTunes still wasn't there and all that. But nevertheless, the fundamentals of the iPod they put together in 6 months.
Original iPod, original iPhone, right there.
Yeah, and then the iPhone was the same. Not only did nobody think that Apple could enter the cell phone market, they entered it with a product. The one I've got today, yeah. This is essentially the same as the original iPhone. It's just been heavily technically iterated. Yeah. And the fact that they could do that, and again, in a year, 18 months. I mean, got to remember that prototype, that the one that he demoed at Macworld barely worked. Everyone was holding their breath thinking it was going to fall over. And they had about 3 or 4 spares in case it did.
And they did it with 1/100th of the number of employees,
Exactly.
1/100th of the resources they have now.
Exactly.
They've lost that
The drive.
shoot shit at the wall and see what sticks.
And
they don't have
also
that
as well,
anymore.
They don't have
Well,
they can't iterate and narrow down onto the right essentials because they haven't got Steve Jobs there. He was the secret sauce that allowed them to do that. He was the
100%.
one
But to be
who'd take
fair,
it in and he would go, yeah, like that. No, don't like that. That's shit.
And I know what you're going to say, Guy. Yeah, it's not fair because who else has a Steve Jobs?
No.
Correct.
That wasn't what I was
Yeah.
going to say. What I was going to say was it was an existing market that Apple came into, whereas something like the iPod, for the most part, there were a couple of other
There
products.
was a lot of MP3 players when the iPod.
Yeah, but they were all such garbage.
But so was cell phones. So were computers. Apple wasn't the first to have
But it
a
was-
desktop computer.
The difference between the MP3 player market and the cell phone market is it's leaps and bounds. There were already millions of people with cell phone, probably a billion or so people that already had cell phones,
but no cell
they're-
phone like the
but-
iPhone.
but no cell phone like the iPhone.
Yeah. That's
Well,
And-
you could say
the
the same thing
ability
with the Mac, same thing with
Yeah.
the iPod. Apple is not, well, I don't want to say that. Laser printer started with Apple, digital camera started with Apple. So they did invent a lot of things. But that was, again, comes back to taste. And that's what Steve Jobs had. He looked at something and went, okay, that shit, and that shit. We're going to put the Apple spin on it. And more often than not, he was right.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's very
what-
rare to say.
What existing market is there now that
Well,
Apple
we're not
isn't in that they could go into and make a huge change with?
I think there's probably a lot of them. Televisions. Now, we keep thinking television's at the pinnacle of what it can be. I disagree. Our televisions aren't a whole lot different than what you and I had in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Okay, they're thinner, they're lighter, they have apps on them. But it's still, you sit there and it's a passive thing. You watch the television. That's rife for some upstart company to come in and completely change everything.
Well, they
Everything.
keep trying. There's a lot of companies that
Because there hasn't been a Steve Jobs that's looked at it.
Yeah.
That's what we're
Yeah,
missing. That's what I keep coming back to.
I think the issue with things like that, though, at the moment, there's an awful lot of social change on things like that and the interaction with TVs. I mean, how many people now sit in front of a TV? It's getting less and less. There are still plenty of people, but actually the interaction now is with your iPads and with your pads. You know, it's all mobile. Everybody's always on the move, which I'm not saying I agree with. You know, we actually still try and sit down and get a group of us to sit in front because you've got that social interaction with the TV.
It's ironic that we have the very best televisions ever created.
Yeah.
And they look so good and we don't use them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we have to work at that to interact with it. Whereas you're dead right, Tim, it would be better that if it was a more, you know, interactive tool to bring people together to be able to utilize it.
Yeah. To me, I've always thought that, you know, you see nowadays, you'll see a group of 2-3 people sat down in front of the TV. They'll all have their phones out. They'll be on their phones while they're watching TV. My kids consider this to be some sort of superpower. As far as they're concerned, they go, "Oh, we can multitask better than you." And it's like, well, you're not really multitasking. You're either looking at the phone or you're looking at the TV. And when you're looking at the phone, you've no idea what's happening with the TV. So the guy could be shot dead. You wouldn't know it happened. Because you weren't watching.
What happened? What happened before that thing that happened? It's like, why weren't you watching it?
So
to me, what could happen with TVs, what would be interesting, is you actually bring those two worlds closer together. So the TV becomes less of a thing of its own, and it's more of an extension of the phone, right? So
that's not far from what Apple is trying to do with you know, where you have multiple people watching the same program at the same time.
I think here's the difference is that Apple is kind of it's been very, very nervous about stepping into TV. And they're making a success of it now. Apple TV Plus is a huge success. It's winning Emmys and all that sort of thing. But they really have tiptoed into that market. I think the Apple of yesteryear might have tried to do the Big Bang thing.
But
that's the problem with that, though, Dave. The problem with that, though, is its size, isn't it? It's corporational size.
Not just that. Also, who owns the content?
No. Put that aside. Put that aside
because that's a big component of it.
Yes, you can, because that's exactly what Apple have done. They've started to create their own content. You got to put that aside. As a corporation, they will be much more cautious now than they have ever been in whatever product they go for.
Yeah, because they're a big corporation. The sad part. Yeah, and they've got shareholders to deal with. But the ridiculous thing is they're sat on so much money that they could afford to say, screw the shareholders.
But they always try something new. They have shareholders since 76.
What I was saying is there's a financial argument that they could make now to say, we're going to make a big bet. It's going to cost us a lot of money. And shareholders, if you don't like it, tough, we're going to do it anyway.
And that's where Steve Jobs came from.
Exactly. And that is not them now. Now they are very much the incremental softly. I'm not saying one is better than the other, because the advantage,
from a financial standpoint, what they're doing now is by far better.
Exactly.
But from people like us, who started following Apple under the Steve Jobs Apple, we'd rather have it the other way, because I would love nothing more than become very passionate about another Apple product. I just don't see it happening.
I wonder if this is aligned, this statement. You know, I'm a follower of Formula One.
Yep.
And they were talking to a couple of drivers, and they said to the drivers, you know, the reliability of some of the cars is what's letting you down. And I think they were talking to Charles Leclerc, who's chasing Max Verstappen as hard as he can. And he said, I would prefer to have less reliability and speed than reliability and less speed. Yeah. You're always going to live on the edge. You know, let's, if it breaks, it breaks, but we're fast enough to compete. And I think that's almost a similar sort of comparison.
Yeah,
I would agree. I could tell you guys
what's the solution then?
Well, we already know the solution. They need someone like a Steve Jobs. The problem is it's a once in a generation kind of person. Yeah. I mean, there was always this competition in our minds and the public between Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Well, Bill Gates won if you count money, right? Yep. But if you count innovation, literally changing the world, I think Steve Jobs has an edge on that. Look, you can't. When we were at the Macworld Expo, and I think David, you were there too in 2007 when they unveiled the iPhone. You were there, David, or
No,
no?
That was the next year.
after.
You and I
so
were there.
You and I were
along
there,
with
yep.
Larry.
Yep.
My brother
So
Larry.
we're in the audience watching that live, and Guy, we're maybe 50 feet away from the stage, if that.
Yeah.
When he pulled that phone out of his pocket,
everybody
and started demonstrating it, I knew right then this is going to change the world. This was a product that, and we talked about, because we did a podcast immediately afterwards, we talked about opening it up to applications, developers. And we knew that this was going to change everything. And we were 100% right. It's very rare in your life that you are witness to something that literally changes everything. And the iPhone, and by definition, Android in the mobile world now, changed everything. It completely changed the world. And that was Steve Jobs. But speaking of...
what was funny was everybody kept making comparisons of the iPhone to... what was it? It was some product by... wasn't Philips. There was some other product that had like a grayscale screen that had apps. And everybody kept saying... No, not the Palm. Yeah. It was some other company that had a smartphone that had apps, but that was what everybody kept trying to make comparisons to the iPhone. And it was like, no, this is a completely different type of...
The moment I saw him scrolling through pictures and it would go fast and slow down, and then to pinch and zoom, it was, the best camera in the world is, right?
The one you have in your pocket.
That's 100% correct.
No, it's I'm sorry. Nowadays, it's the James Webb. It's out at Lagrange point 2.
You're not wrong about that. I could tell you guys my two Steve Jobs story.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
The first one was many years ago. Obviously, he's been dead for a while. When I started MyMac, the name was a fill-in. I had all these different names that I wanted to try, and every single time I picked one, somebody already had it. I really wanted MacSense, and there was a MacSense. So at one point, I reached out to Apple because they had a defunct online world called eWorld. It was kind of
associated with the Newton. That was kind of part of what that was supposed to all be about.
But it failed. And it was a much nicer AOL. And the aesthetics were great. And I thought the word itself was cool. So I reached out to Apple about acquiring the name. Mm-hmm. And for a while, I didn't hear anything. And I did it through formal channels and everything. So finally, out of frustration, and I'd even talked to, I can't remember his name now. He was the head of Apple Legal at the time. If I said his name, you'd know who he was. Fred Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
I just wasn't getting anywhere. So I reached out directly to Steve Jobs, which I thought was probably a mistake, but I did it anyways. So I sent Steve Jobs an email, and it was just sjobs@apple.com. Mm-hmm. And famously, he would actually reply to some people. So I was hoping that was going to happen, and unfortunately it did. And he said they have no interest in licensing or selling the name. Well, so much for my idea.
Yep.
Except a day or two later, I get a FedEx envelope with a licensing agreement, a legal licensing agreement from Apple for eWorld. They agreed. So MyMac almost became eWorld. And the only reason, well, there's two. The only two reasons I didn't sign, number one, Steve Jobs had said no. And if I sign this legal agreement, he might not be happy with Fred Anderson. And it was from Fred Anderson, this licensing agreement. So I didn't want to get Fred Anderson in trouble and then have the name pulled away from me at the last minute. And they wanted like $2,000 a year. And there was so many, like it has to be a small E with and if it's a logo, it's got to be the purple and blah, blah, blah. And the second reason was, well, it wasn't that it wasn't worth it. I think it could have been. But a bigger reason was I don't own it. And if I'm going to create something and I take MyMac to the next level, at any time, Apple could just take it away from me. Yep. Didn't like that idea.
What?
Ice cream truck.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, what the hell is that?
So that was my first interaction with Steve Jobs. My second one was at either 99 or 2000 Macworld Expo. And this was after the keynote and everything. I don't remember what was released. Oh, Mac OS 10. So it was 2000, January of 2000. I'm walking, and back then the Macworld Expo showroom floor was gigantic. I mean, it was so big.
Did you ever go to the one in New York?
No, which is ironic because it's a lot closer.
Yeah.
And Javits is a bigger place too. Well, no, I think Moscone's actually bigger than Javits. But anyways, because Moscone is multiple buildings, whereas Javits is just the one giant one. Yeah. I'm on the showroom floor, and I come across this booth, and they're selling an Apple Watch. Now, we're thinking this right now, right? The Apple Watch, sure, Tim. How are you looking at an Apple Watch in '99? That's stupid. Well, it was regular watches that had Apple logos, and they were really cool. And I bought one. It was like, I don't know, $35. Still have it, by the way. So here's this Apple Watch. I put it on. It's really cool. It's kind of a cheap watch, but it's kind of shaped like an apple. It's the dials are Apple at the end. It was cool. And, you know, I'm passionate about Apple. So I leave the booth. I go down a couple lines or a couple aisles. When I come back, I see Steve Jobs. Because back then, he would actually walk the showroom floor. And he didn't have this huge entourage with him. He had usually 2 or 3 guys. One of them was obviously a security guy, but he would walk and talk to people and look at the booths. And he was going ape shit at this Apple Watch booth. What the hell is this crap? And why is my logo? And he said my logo, by the way. Why is my logo on? He's just going, I want this out of here. This is, you don't have, you can't use our logo. And the guy actually had a licensing agreement to use that logo.
Right.
Because I asked him when I was there, I was like, can you use the Apple logo? And he was like, oh yeah, it's costing me a lot of money, but yeah, we got a legal agreement. And I kind of knew how that went because I could have had a legal agreement with Apple. And he is just going ballistic. And everybody within 50 feet is just froze, including me. I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound good. So,
watch.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a watch.
I'm putting my hand on my back. You're right, Steve. That's shit. I got to use the bathroom.
Excuse me. Be right back.
So I walk away because I don't. It's uncomfortable the way Steve Jobs is. When you think of Steve Jobs ranting, I saw it was right there.
Yeah.
I go down an aisle that I'd already been down, come back around. So I'm gone maybe 10 minutes, right? I get back. There isn't anything of this booth left. It is concrete floor. The carpet the guy was standing on, gone. The tables, everything is just, it's nuke and pave, baby, gone.
There's
and I was like,
layer of salt that was
man. I was just like, holy moly, it was impressive that he wanted it gone, and that sucker was gone.
You remember when that guy used to do the fake Steve Jobs, and he used to talk about the Mossad agents he had working for him.
Yeah.
You can imagine them coming in, just taking it all.
So that
the showroom floor
would be worth a bob or two now, I should think.
Well, here's the thing. I think I was one of the only people that got one because the showroom floor had just opened.
Yeah.
And this is one of the main, when you first walk in and you take it was right there. It was right there. Guy had it was a small booth. It was like a 5x5, but it was at the end of the line, but it was at the beginning of when you first walk in. I think it was Moscone South.
But do you remember his name? Exactly.
Yeah. Nobody does, Guy.
He's been expunged from history.
It was an impressive display of
no
power.
Apple Watch ever.
Yeah, it was. So that's my 2 Steve Jobs stories. I miss the Steve Jobs keynotes. When it comes to the keynotes nowadays, I watch the whole keynote in 21-minute things that The Verge or somebody always puts up because they're so boring. They're so corporate speak. They're so politically correct. It's just, and look, I'm a PC guy when it comes to that. You shouldn't be a dick just to be a dick. And if something's offensive, people maybe don't do that thing anymore because why be a dick? But I don't know. It's just so
It's
blase.
Manila. It's Manila.
Exactly. Yeah, and and that kind of also speaks to the products, in my opinion.
Well, let's.
They're still the best, but they're just boring.
We've pretty much covered everything that the history and the lineage of the MyMac podcast and the stuff that we're doing now. Before we go, and you kind of started this, Tim, when you were talking about the Macworld Expo. What is the funniest thing that you can remember that ever happened going to a Macworld Expo?
You are intimately in this story, guy.
Huh.
I
think I know where this is going.
Yeah, I had lost my baggage. Well, I didn't. The airline did, and they said they would send it to the hotel, and I was like, "Screw that! They're going to lose it again. I'm going to wait at the airport, SFO, for my luggage to arrive." And I remember sitting there, and it was completely deserted. There's nobody. And I remember seeing David Pogue looking at, because at the time he was still at Macworld Expo. He might have been at the New York Times by then. I don't know. But I knew David Pogue. He knew me. We talked before. And he's like, "What are you doing still here? You need a lift?" I was like, "No, they lost my bags. I'm going to wait." And I did. And there's nothing to eat at SFO. There is if you're departing, but if you're arriving, there's no restaurants or no anything. So by the time I get to my hotel, it's way late. And you have to be in line early, even in press line, early for a Macworld Expo. And I think this is 2006, guy.
No, the first one I went to was 07.
Okay, so this is probably 08 then. Which I think, if I'm not mistaken, might have been MacBook Air when he pulls it out of the manila envelope, but maybe not. I don't remember. Anyways, I've got my own hotel. Guy and I meet in line at the press to go in for the keynote. And I haven't eaten since before my flight the day before. I am freaking starving. I am so hungry. Guy starts complaining that he hasn't eaten since yesterday. And he's starving. But we got to sit through this keynote. But we're excited for the keynote. So we go into the keynote. The whole thing goes. And as soon as the keynote ends, we go down to the press room, set our stuff down, and we're like, we've got to go find something to eat. I'm so freaking, I'm going to pass out. I'm so hungry. So Guy and I make a beeline out of Moscone Center and start walking.
We left somebody in charge of like watching our stuff.
Yeah. What's his name? Bill Palmer.
Yeah. He paid for it later.
He did. I still have that photo.
Yeah.
So we start walking and we're not finding anything. And then finally we pass this, it's basically a convenience store, but yet somehow they have a Chinese buffet thing in there. And at this point, we're just like, we'll eat a dead horse that's rotting at this point because we're so hungry.
Carcass.
So we go in there. It's like $5 and you just fill this thing up. And we did. And we're not that far from the Moscone Center. So we fill it up. We go back to the press room and we eat. And I think we both agree, Guy, that was some of the best Chinese food we've ever had in our lives. It was
amazing.
It was so good. So good. So that's not the funny part. The funny part is the next year and the year after, Guy and I make a pilgrimage to find this place again, and it does not exist. We can't even find the bill. We went everything around there. We even walked farther than we knew it was because we were so starving that we couldn't walk that far. We would have died. I think that the place existed in one moment of time just to feed Guy, Cyril, and I.
I think it had an Apple logo on the door.
And we stole someone's lunch. We were hallucinating. That's my funniest and mystical moment because I how did we never find that again, Guy? We looked. We really tried.
You know, it's the San Francisco thing. I've been San Francisco quite a few times, not just for Macworld. And there's a couple of places like that where I went to. That was the most incredible food. I must go back there again. And you can never find them. I think it is some sort of
unless it's
San Francisco mojo. The fog must dissolve them or something because they just disappear.
I just remember it was so good. Every single thing we got was just. And Guy and I were commenting. I'm like, I remember looking at you going, "Is it just me, or is this really good?" And you're like,
"No, it was amazing.
This is amazing." And we just chowed down.
And cheap. I mean, it was so cheap.
Dude, we got the big styrofoam thing, huge.
Yeah.
It must have weighed 3 pounds. It was $5.
We paid more every single morning at Mel's Diner.
Oh, no question.
Like twice as much than we did for that Chinese food that we never found again.
I tell you, one of the saddest things I ever did when I was at OWC, I went to this very small show. I mean, it was, when I say small, I mean it was really small.
How small was it?
David Cohen small. And
that's pretty small.
And there was a celebrity there too. I can't remember who it was now, so couldn't have been too impressive. But anyways, I went to Mel's because it was just down the street, and it was so sad to be there without the MyMac crew. I mean, it was the same, but it wasn't. I was like, this sucks. It just didn't have the atmosphere with all the friends there.
I will be there in about 4 or 5 weeks. So,
but David, do you have a funny Macworld story?
So, this is the funniest thing that ever happened to me while I was with you guys at Macworld was the last time we all went there. Tim and I were staying at the Mossa, which is that kind of weird little hotel just up the street from. From
that was actually a great little hotel.
That's also where I'm staying in a few weeks again. I really like it there, but it is a very odd place.
Yes.
But you can't beat the location because it is literally
across the
3
street.
minutes walk from Moscone.
Yeah.
So I met. We were waiting for you to come down. I think it was the morning, or maybe we're going out for dinner. I forget. Anyway, I'm down there with Tim. Tim's outside having a smoke, and this guy walks up to us. Yeah, this kind of elderly black gentleman in a suit, and he's one of these religious guys that you have wandering around San Francisco.
What?
He starts engaging me in conversation, and I'm just really not interested in whatever it is he's selling. I'm just like, I'm not there. So I'm trying to, just kind of say, oh, well, really, I don't, Anyway, Tim decides to have some fun. So Tim engages him in conversation, and he starts arguing with him about every single point. And this guy didn't really know what hit him because he was used to being the alpha dog of the conversation. And all of a sudden, he was not.
I have no memory of this.
No, you could see him become visibly uncomfortable because Tim did that thing where every time the guy said something, he would come back and basically rebutted the point with a fact to the point that the guy couldn't say anything. And so we then try and move on to something else. And after about 5 minutes of this, he literally kind of ghosted us and wandered off and started trying to bother somebody else.
I gotta go. I'm leaving.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
Well, Gaz, I know you never went to.
No, so I was going to jump in there and say, obviously, the only related Mac stories that I've got that's interactive with you guys was I picked up a keyboard from Don McAllister because Don and I actually both flew over for Mac Stock in 2015, and I think David had linked up with Don McAllister to hand over this keyboard, this clickety-clack keyboard that Tim was so in love with and wanted to utilize.
Extended too,
yeah. So I'd somehow had to make sure that I could get this in my case and bring it across. And there's a picture of me handing over this particular keyboard to Tim. But meeting you, Guy, for the first time was when I realized that I'm not a tall guy. I'm only 5'7", 5'8", something like that. It's a pretty average for over here, I'd say. I won't say any more, David. And then I met you, and I'm kind of I'm looking up and up and up and up and up and up. And I had to get on a stool and stand on the table, I think, to get eye to eye with you. But that was a great 2015.
I remember walking down the road or down a sidewalk at Macworld Expo, heading towards the expo. And there's like 4 or 5 of these guys blocking our path. The guy had this long flowing hair at the time. He looked like freaking Hulk Hogan. He's probably 285, 6'7", Hulk Hogan hair. And these guys are just not moving. And I was about to say something, but I didn't have to because all I hear from Guy is move. And it was like parting the Red Sea. They looked at Guy and just slunk out of the way. I was like,
if only they knew what a pussycat he was.
right.
I really am. I am.
He's
I
a
am
black
actually
belt.
Yeah, I know. So have you got a funny story then, Guy?
I've got a couple funny stories. First one involves my brother Larry. The first time, and it was 2007. No. There's so many stories we could tell about BJ.
Good Lord.
Larry and I had left the hotel we were in. I think we were all at the Holiday Inn that first year. And we're just kind of walking around, and we come up to this traffic light. We were looking for someplace to go for dinner. And this group of kids came up to the light waiting to go across and they're just loud and obnoxious, like teenagers can be. And Larry kind of leans into me and goes, "I'm very uncomfortable." And I looked at Larry. I said, "What do you think is going to happen here? They're not going to mess with anybody. Even if they were the kinds of kids that were, they're going to pick a better target than some guy that's like 6'6", 285 pounds. Not going to happen." And on that same note, a number of years later, I was at one of you remember Smile Software? I don't even know if they're still around. Software had a party, and Elisa was there. Elisa Pacelli was there, and Vicky Stokes was there. And I don't remember if you were there, Tim, but it was at
the Smile on MyMac party. I remember that one.
Yeah. But it was the party was like in the middle of nowhere as far as San Francisco goes. And when we came out of the club, we waited for a little bit in front of the club, but we couldn't find a taxi. So we started to walk down this street, and it's completely dark, and there's all you can see are the shapes of people moving around. And the darker it got, the closer Elisa and Vicky came to either side of me. And Elisa actually said something along the lines of, "You're our bodyguard." So I thought that was pretty funny.
And didn't you dress up? Didn't you dress up as a bodyguard at Alison Sheridan's do?
Yeah, there was one year. It was Julie Keel, Barry Falk. I can't remember the name of the other guy, and myself. I had shirts made up that
was
said
it Shadwell? Was it Paul Shadwell?
Yes, Paul Shadwell.
That was the last year, wasn't it? Because I wasn't at that expo.
No, it was. I want to say it was like 2009, 2010. You were there because there's pictures of you and me standing next to each other.
Oh,
and
that was at that
you have
bar.
like this really weird look on your face. Yeah, the bar that was
my natural resting face, by the way.
Well, usually around me at least.
Yeah, that was that bar right, like in the Sony thing.
Yeah, in the
Metronome. Yeah.
Whatever that place was called. The last one, it was just Tim and me. And when we used to leave, the cheapest flights that you could get was always the red-eye flight.
I've never seen anybody so uncomfortable in my life.
But before we even get onto the plane, we're at this like closed cafe, and we're waiting to go to our gate to get onto the plane. And we just had it was like coffee or maybe Tim had a Mountain Dew or something along those lines. And Gaz and I on the podcast had started doing, I think this was like the last time you went, Tim, we had started doing bumpers.
Yeah, oh,
for the show.
Oh my God, I know what you're talking about now.
I was talking to Tim about it, and it was like, we're having trouble coming up with funny bumpers for the MyMac podcast. And Tim was like, "Oh, I can rail off about 15 or 20 of those." And so we're sitting there, and we start going back and forth with bumpers, and they're just becoming more and more outrageous the farther that we're going. And at some point, we can't even finish saying
we're laughing so hard.
hard.
We're so tired from the long expo.
It's like 11:30 at night.
It was. And we bumped our flight,
day.
didn't we? We bumped our flight, and we were flying out together.
Yes, yeah, because I used to go either to Michigan, and then I would drive from Michigan home, or I would go to Ohio, where I have a buddy that lives, and I drive home from there, which always made my wife crazy. She said, "Why don't you just go from DC?" It's like reasons. So But the funny part wasn't that we were laughing so hard about these bumpers. It was the two San Francisco policemen that were on the other side of the cafe that were just eyeballing us like crazy, trying to figure out if we were on drugs, if we were drunk, or if and how the hell we got through security with this obviously poor attitude. and again, half the time we would just be like, and then Gas says, and that would be about as far as we could go. But when you're riffing back and forth like that, you don't even have to finish it, and the other person is laughing really hard.
Yeah.
And of course, then there's all the stories with BJ, which could probably take up a whole nother half hour. And he was only there for 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years.
He was a character. He tried calling me like 4 times in the last week. I always know it's him because it's FaceTime audio from 4-4. So
he calls me at work, and I can't talk to him at work.
It's a whole conversation. Half the time he's drunk. And I will say this about Larry, your brother.
Yeah,
Larry stutters.
Yes,
and
so do I.
Well, Larry's brilliant. He really is.
Yeah.
Most people don't know how smart Larry really is.
He's got a rated IQ of like 185.
I think I'm just going to jump in and just pause you there because I think David's got a point to end his little time with us.
My family is COVID positive and they need feeding, so I do need to go.
Okay, we're going to end this.
I'll just wrap up with the Larry one real quick. I wanted to get Larry on the show, but he didn't. He was uncomfortable talking because he didn't want to stutter on the show, and I understood that. So I came up with, I thought, a perfect idea to get him on, because we were doing the MyMac video stuff from the expo, remember?
Yes.
And so I would be on the mic with him, talking about what we saw at the show. And every time he would try, I would solicit his opinion. I wouldn't let him talk. So I would say, so I'm here with Larry Grinnell, and I remember the microphone had broke or something because the audio is not great.
Yeah.
But I'm here with Larry Grinnell, and Larry, Steve Jobs unveiled this. What do you think? And then the moment he starts talking, well, I would pull the mic back really fast, completely oblivious. Well, I think, Larry, that's blah, blah, blah. And then, what do you think about this? And he'd start, and then I'd pull the mic, and I did it like 3 times.
Yeah.
And this is Tim at the MyMac, or at the Macworld Expo for MyMac.com. And then the camera zooms up onto Larry, and he just gives this Larry like, what the hell just happened?
It's still there in your feed somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's in the MyMacs, on the MyMac page on Facebook.
Yeah,
that I love that segment. His expression at the end is just, you couldn't direct someone to do it any better. It was just, and we came up with a whole bit in literally 30 seconds because I wanted him. Yeah, I wanted him on there, but he really was self-conscious about how maybe stuttering. So I thought, well, this is what we'll do. I'll ask you a question, but I won't actually let you answer anything. And I want you to look a little frustrated, like, what the hell? And then I'm going to end it and walk away. And I think you were on the cameras, Guy. I think you were and I said, and Guy, just zoom up on Larry, and Larry just give this perplexed look like, what the hell just happened? And we did it one take. It was perfect. Just perfect. Loved it.
Well, we've been going on for quite a bit and have gone so far afield from where we'd actually begun. But that is not unusual for the MyMac.com podcast, or for Tim and David for that matter.
Well, we usually stick to an hour. I'm usually pretty much a hard out because I don't want to overstay my welcome, if you will. And we kind of run out of steam. We're like, okay, we hit our topics.
Yeah. Our heads are on our microphones.
I will say this about the MyMac podcast. I started it many, many years ago. It wouldn't exist now if it wasn't for you guys. It's definitely your show. But that being said, I've told David this in the past, and he's agreed. If you guys decided, you know what, we just don't really feel like doing this anymore, and life's changed, and we're going to move on, and we're going to walk away from the show, the MyMac podcast would not end.
No,
Tech Fan would end. That's what would end. And David and I would just be doing what we do currently, but it would be the MyMac.com podcast tech fan somehow in there maybe, but this show isn't going to go away if you guys ever left. So if you both are hit by a bus on the same day, the MyMac show continues.
Well, one
I'm gonna
one of
watch
us
your
could be,
feed
that
for
can be
hiring
arranged.
buses.
Gaz is making plans now.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, and I've said this to Gaz, and I've said it on the show many times. Gaz and I are the longest running hosts of the MyMac podcast by far.
By far. Close, yeah.
But it's not our show. We don't own the show. You own the show, and I make that distinction not because I'm trying to assign blame or anything along those lines. It's that
Tim pays the hosting fees.
He does. You do. I always want to acknowledge the fact that if it wasn't for you, I would probably not be podcasting. I probably wouldn't have bought all these microphones. So yeah, that's part of it's on you. That's definitely on you.
I think podcasting for both of you guys is your calling. The conversation that you guys have transcends the topics of the day. And that's why people listen to the show.
It transcends what we originally meant to talk about half the time.
But that's kind of when it gets good. When I'm listening to you guys and I can hear it going off the rails from what the plan was, that's when it gets interesting to me.
Yes, I agree.
And I could tell with you guys as well that I can hear it in your voices sometimes. You're like, I have no idea how we got here, but I'm glad we did.
Yeah.
Gaz, what is the one thing that you have to say to me every single week, especially during your snippets?
Will you let me finish?
Exactly.
I should probably say that to David more often because he sometimes gets the same, keeps going and going. I'm like, take a breath. Take a breath. I got to make a note to talk about something when you're done talking for the next 8 minutes.
Yeah.
It's fun though, isn't it?
Good. Yeah,
it is.
What a great medium this is. Just people getting together, talking, and let's hope it finds an audience. But I don't know about you guys. For me, I don't really care.
No. Well,
I never have.
Who would have thought 30 years ago? Let's go back 30 years. That the average person with a relatively small investment would be able to have a video channel, would be able to have an audio channel, and be able to put all of this stuff out, whether or not he's got one listener or 10,000 listeners. It's, the cost to entry is negligible.
Nothing. Yeah.
These days. And with free hosting pretty much everywhere, especially with video.
Well, look how many people started podcasting when we did, Guy. And how many of them are still doing it?
A lot of them aren't.
I would say 99.9% of them are not doing it anymore.
Podfade.
Yeah. Well, that's what we gave it. That we named it that years and years ago. Podfade. That they start out strong and then go smear, gone. Yep. And some of them were great shows. But the thing is, if you don't have anything to say, you're not going to last long. If you don't enjoy doing it, if what you're doing is dependent upon how many advertisers you can get and how many downloads you're getting, you're doing it. You're going to fail 100% of the time. I never did podcasting for the money. And to be honest, when you look back at the history of the show, Guy, I remember you and I sitting in a crowd where we were standing there while a bunch of podcasters, Mac podcasters, are up on the stage talking about how you have advertising? How do you make money on podcasts? And I don't know if you can. And you leaning in towards me going, we have ads and stuff. We're making money. Yeah, but they didn't invite us on the stage because we've always done our own thing. Me more so than you. I've never been, hey, let's go join that crowd over there and I want to hang out with those guys. I've always just done my own thing. I was never the big partier at Macworld Expos. When the showroom closed, I was at the hotel editing articles, editing pictures, editing the audio, and getting them uploaded. It was this, which was important to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't being in the in crowd. I didn't give a shit what other people were doing. I didn't start this podcast initially hoping that I would make friends with other people that were also doing it. I didn't give a shit about that. I didn't care the coverage that they were getting or giving. Macworld was named after Macworld magazine, and we consistently in the last 7 years of the event, 8 years of the event, had way better coverage than Macworld Expo than they ever did. It wasn't even close. Nobody ever had as much.
10 people. We had 9-10 people from MyMac there.
Yeah, we just did our own thing, and we had fun doing it. We didn't care what other people were doing.
We would
And I'm still
dominate
like
like
that.
2 tables.
Oh yeah,
2 tables in the press room.
we'd make people angry at us. Like, look, they got all the tables over there. Yeah, we got a lot of people here.
Have more people.
In fact,
Anyway.
at one point they started to try to say, remember, Paul Kent said they were only going to let one person in per organization. Remember that?
Yeah.
And we blew them up on the podcast. They changed their mind.
Can I just say we've had a comment from Troy in Facebook, and I'd just like to read it because I think you'll like this guy. Well, you probably will as well, Tim. He says, "I like the MyMac podcast because there's no backstory. I can miss like 5 episodes, and I haven't missed a crucial plot point."
Exactly.
That's the point.
That is the point. Tim, when you're not on the MyMac live podcast that we never do, where can people find you, and what else do you do?
Well, I will sell you a new Toyota. I do that.
Yeah. Or will you?
Well, I'll sell you a piece of paper for $500 and promise to sell you one eventually. How about that? I do the Tech Fan podcast with David every week or every other week. And then the weeks that we're not doing Tech Fan, we do the Geeks Pub, which initially was we would drink heavily and talk about geeky stuff, but I do it at 7:30 on Sunday morning, and Julie generally wouldn't.
Can't really drink. Yeah.
No. Plus, when I drink a lot, I just want to go to sleep anyway. So probably would be kind of a boring episode. And then I'm just, uploading stuff for this show and a couple others, and it's fun. Still slogging along. Keep every now and then coming up with ideas of doing something at mymac.com, and just haven't done anything in a long time.
Okay. What about you, Gaz?
Well, I'm here.
Oh, that's true.
I'm here with you, Guy, every week. Although
I'm sorry.
Well, you should apologize. It's your, but although I kind of feel good because you often say it's your therapy session, and if I'm doing some good in the world, it's making you a better person, then I'll stick with that. That'll do it for me.
Thumbs up.
The only problem is for the next few weeks I'm not going to be about, so you're going to be on edge like this. So.
Well, next week, of course.
Do you want me to play the music? Do you want me to play the music and tell them where they can find me?
Sure.
Is that what you're aiming for?
Are you not in your head? I'm not going to play that.
Okay, so you can send an email to Gaz, G-A-Z,
Gars.
at mymac.com, or on the Twitters, twitter.com/Gazmaz, G-A-Z,
Gars.
M-A-Z.
Gars.
Or you can contact both Guy and myself on the Twitters, twitter.com/Guy and Gaz, G-Y, A-N-D, G-A-Z.
Yes.
Or you can send an email to feedback, F-W-D-B-A-C-K, at mymac.com. There you go. That's where you can find me.
If you would like to find out more about me for whatever your crazy ass reason is, I can be found. You can send me an email to Guy at mymac.com. Oh, there they go. I tell you, the bane of my existence is that movie Free Guy right there. Bane of my existence. You can also find me on the Twitters. I am both Mac Parrot and Vert Shark. There we go. Over there on the Twitters. And we have a Skype telephone number, Gaz.
Do it quickly.
Okay, 703-436-9501 with a 1 or a +1. That number again is 1 or +1 outside the United States, 703-436-9501. Or if a 1 or a 0 or a plus is a problem for you, and it apparently is for some people, you can just go right to the Skype application and dial 703-436-9501. And I would like to say, for everyone who has made it through this extra super long episode, thank you. Thank you so very, very much for joining us for 700 and 615 episodes, a crap ton of episodes of the mighty MyMac.com podcast. We greatly appreciate it. And Gaz, I would like to say that this week, especially, mostly because, Tim and David were here, that we were good enough. And that mostly because Tim and David were here, we were smart enough. And that Wilf, gone it. People like us. But there's
one dad joke, and then I'll end it.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Guy, if you see a crime happen in an Apple store, what does that make you?
I don't know.
An eyewitness. End.
Okay, that's it.
And I can't deny the fact that you like me right now.
All right, everybody. We gotta go. Thanks to everyone who has joined us this entire time. There's not going to be any after show because obviously, practically this entire episode was kind of after show-ish material. And Tim, thanks so much for being here. I didn't realize that David was going to just drop out as quickly as he did.
He had to jump, yeah. So
I know. But I really appreciate the fact that both of you came on kind of really short notice for this
fun.
show. And I actually, honestly, I wouldn't mind doing this again sometime.
Well, if you need a co-host, let me know. Sundays are usually good for me. The kids are old enough now where I don't have to, chase after them to get them to be quiet.
Yeah. That can be a problem with children. With me, it's cats now.
If you've been listening to Tech Fan or Geeks Pub, it's been cats with me too.
Yeah. How many do you have now?
2.
How did you... here's the thing, and before we go, I guess this is a little bit of after show.
So we're going.
Yeah. I remember flying into Detroit with Tim and then driving from Detroit to his house because he was going to give me a printer. And it was this big, and I still have it. We're still using it.
It's like a Color Laser Brothers printer or something.
It was like a Brother. It's a Brother Color Laser printer. It's still going strong. 13 years now or longer?
Those companies used to send me so many products for review. It was just insane.
And it's a great printer. It's a wonderful, wonderful printer. But when we got to the house, you had a dog, and it was cold as hell because this is like February.
January.
Yeah. And there was a black furry cat that you guys
Parker
wouldn't let into the house.
No.
But you fed him. And I guess he'd originally belonged to like one of your neighbors who had abandoned him or whatever.
At our old house, yeah, and he became our cat, Parker.
Yeah.
Didn't have a tail, had a little nub. I thought maybe it got cut off or something, but it turned out that no, he was born that way, and it's
like a Manx,
a breed. Well, it's a breed of a cat that doesn't have tails like that, and I guess they're quite valuable. But no, he was an indoor cat, and
it was a beautiful cat.
One week, Julie took the kids and her side of the family to Disney World, Florida, and I couldn't go. I had to work. And every morning I'd wake up, the cat was sleeping on the bed on Julie's side. And I'd get off the bed because we didn't allow him up there.
Yeah.
But for a whole week, I'd wake up and there he is in the bed. He was loving it. So then Julie comes home. Second day, we come home from work. The cat had got on the bed and pooped right in the middle of her pillow.
Oh, no.
He was very upset that she was back and couldn't sleep on the bed no more. And then he became an outdoor cat. And he stayed an outdoor cat for 10 years. Even through the Michigan winter. He was out there. Yep. And he would look at me like, can I come in? And I'm like,
no, you kind of lost that.
I can't help you out, brother. You did that yourself.
You lost that responsibility.
Yeah,
that's right.
Sorry, man. Now we've got 2 cats now. And one of them we got is a kitty that shouldn't have been away from the mom. But abandoned cat. You know how that is. We have a friend that does cat rescue.
Yeah.
So we took this cat in and bottle fed it for a while, and great cat, just really. But we've had these feral cats in the neighborhood for years, and they never came around the house because we had Parker, and Parker was a big cat, and he chased all these other cats out of here. Well, Parker's long gone, so we've had generations after generations of these black cats, and they're completely feral. They're not domesticated
Friendly
house
at all.
cats.
Yeah.
No, we feed them occasionally, but if you put food out there, they will not come to get the food until you're gone. And if you step outside and the food's there, they will scatter. They are
Yep.
not. So there was a little less than a year ago, 4 of them, kitties, and they were feral cats, you know. And 3 of them just a raccoon or something got them. They were gone.
Hmm.
And the last black cat, the little one, decided, I'm living with you guys now. We already had a cat. We didn't want another cat. And this cat, almost overnight, lost its fear of us and would come up running right to you. A little kitty, run right up to you. Probably about 4 months old at that point. So not kitty, but, you know.
Yeah.
And just insisted to come in the house. And so I finally let it come in the house. And it is the most grateful animal I've ever had. You know that this cat picked us. It knew what happened outside, and it did not want anything to do with it.
It's like, no, I don't want to go there.
No, I'm in this house now. Showed him one time how to use a kitty litter box. Remember, this is a feral cat.
Yeah.
One time, does it every time.
It's like, no, I'm good with this. Okay, so you got this special toilet. Good.
She will sit there and kind of stare at you like she's trying to figure stuff out. But here's a weird thing. It plays fetch. What cat plays fetch? And this is a feral cat.
I have seen some on YouTube that do that.
This cat will throw something. It will go get it and bring it back to you, set it down right next to you, and wait for you to throw it again. We didn't teach it this. It just figured it out. What I think Cole threw something once, went and got it, attacked it, you know, and then thought, well, I like that. I'll get him to throw it again. And that's what it does. It's a really, really smart cat. And it has very curious eyes, and we've got the shots and all that stuff now. But
yeah,
you know, they're both really, really good cats. Luna is the oldest one, wasn't really happy about this new cat moving into its territory, and occasionally gets a little shitty about it. But for the most part, yeah, we're cat people now again.
Well, that's how we ended up with the 2 tabbies that we have, because we were down to Shadow, a single, you know, black furry cat, and my son Peter came home with this about 8-month-old kitten, and he and his girlfriend were going to move in together like in 4 or 5 months. And he was like, you know, Dad, one of my idiot friends got this cat for his parents to give to them, and they have 3 dogs. And, you know, surprise, surprise, it didn't work out.
Shocker.
So, yeah. So we want to keep this cat, but we need some place for it to stay until Liza and I move in together. And in about 2 weeks, I was like, yeah, you remember that plan you had of taking this cat when you and Liza moved in together? Yeah, those plans are done because we're going to keep this cat now because it was such a great cat.
Yeah, became your cat.
Became our cat. And then
I think animals pick people
later,
too.
Well, 4 months later, because this was Guy Jr.'s senior year in college, and he was on the crew team. So he was down in Blacksburg, Virginia, which is like 5 hours away from here. And we were trying to go to as many of his crew events as we possibly could. And then we were staying at this hotel that was in the middle of nowhere. There was nothing else around this hotel. And I was still smoking then. So I had stepped out of the hotel to have a cigarette. And this other tabby cat walked up to me and started rubbing on my legs. So I petted it, and then the lobby doors opened up, and the cat ran inside the lobby and got up on the sofa of this hotel. And so I walked in, and I'm looking at the cat, and the cat is just like chilling on the sofa. It's like, oh, no, I'm good here. And I went up to the front desk, and I said, you know, you got a cat there on the sofa. And the lady kind of turned around, and she looked. Yeah, it showed up about a week ago, and we don't know where it came from, and we've been feeding it because it's such a nice kitty. And I called Tracy, and she came downstairs, and she looks at the cat on the sofa, and she looks at me, And she's like, "You're thinking about bringing this cat home, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." So one emergency trip to Walmart later to get a litter box and litter and everything else, because the next day, and we went down there for a crew event. The next day, it was about 20 degrees, super windy, and they actually postponed the event until the next day. It was like a freak April snowstorm that came through. But after the event, we gathered up the cat and all the stuff that we'd gotten, and we drove 5 to 6 hours to go home with this new cat. And Shadow, in the meantime, was like, "Jesus Christ, you just brought a tabby in the house, and now you're bringing in another one. What the hell is up with this?" But she got used to it. And so now she's passed away, but we now have 2 tabby cats, where all we had were black cats before that. So, but I love cats. I always have.
I like
And
dogs too, but they're a pain in the ass.
well, they always have to be
Right.
fed.
I've got to
they
go,
always-
guys. I've got to go.
Yeah, we got to go too. I'm going to stop the broadcast. So everyone, thanks so very, very much for joining us for this extra special long MyMac.com podcast.
Good to see you guys.
Went in so many different directions. And we'll see you all the next time we get together. Bye-bye.